Good afternoon. Sorry for being a bit late. It's not easy to find the room sometimes, and I know that at least one of the speakers just sent me a text saying that she cannot find the room. So we may end up with a smaller panel to start with, as some of us are still trying to find their way into the room. But also happy to see that I think all of the speakers of panel 2 are here already. And then, without further ado, my name is Joaquim Pintado Nunes. I'm a bit stressed because I also had to run from one event to the other and feeling the effects of extreme heat. Anyway, we will kick off this symposium now. I was saying my name is Joaquim Pintado Nunes. I'm the head of the branch of the International Labour Organization responsible for occupational safety and health, called Occupational Safety and Health and the Working Environment Branch. So the session that we're about to start is focusing on something which I think the ILO thinks it's of extreme importance. We often approach safety and health at work from a very technical perspective. And sometimes, we do not forget, but maybe we don't focus enough on the interplay, the relation between safety and health at work and other public goods. And we usually speak of the SDGs related to safety and health as being mostly SDG 8 and SDG 3, but there's so many other SDGs that are relevant from a NOSH standpoint. And this is exactly the objective of the session here today. To hear from, first of all, from a panel of distinguished speakers representing, I would say, the biggest networks, institutions, and platforms representing OSH professionals. And then we will be hearing from government representatives, employers and workers representatives, financial institutions, and other UN agencies, also on how this interconnection between OSH and other public goods and other public policies as well are so relevant, and what is being done to take the best advantage of the synergies between safety and health at work and, for example, poverty reduction, education, environmental protection, and so on. And also, what is still lacking? And then I have a small provocation to our speakers on what would be the biggest call if they were meeting, for example, with heads of state, in terms of a very strong argument for safety and health at work being very present in all that relates to economic and social development. So without further ado, we have a short video from the director of the ILO's Global Social Justice Coalition, Ms. Sana de Courcelles. And this is being displayed here because this event is organized under this coalition, which brings together, hundreds of different governments, employees organizations, workers organizations, the private sector, and also UN bodies. And without further ado, then we'll listen to the video. I hope that it will play well.
Distinguished guests, greetings from Geneva. It is a true honor to share a few words with you today. First, I want to thank the government of Japan for making the Sustainable Development Goals a central theme of EXPO 2025 in Osaka. The SDGs are not just targets. They represent a shared promise to place people, planet, and dignity at the center of progress. At a time when the world is grappling from converging crises, from climate change and inequality to conflict and rapid technological shifts, this renewed commitment to the SDGs could not be timelier. The World Expo stands as a powerful symbol of what humanity can achieve when we come together across borders, sectors, and generations to shape a more inclusive, innovative, and sustainable future. For us at the International Labour Organization, the compass has always been and remains since our founding in 1919, social justice. To elevate this priority and collaborate with others, we established the Global Coalition for Social Justice, a platform that now includes over 370 partners, including governments, workers and employers organizations, international and regional organizations, financial institutions and development banks, enterprises, international non-governmental organizations, and academia, making it the largest multilateral coalition of its kind. Together, we are driving coordinated interventions across 6 priority areas aligned with the SDGs. Because only through social justice we can achieve lasting peace, and only together we can shape a future built on shared prosperity. Among the challenges we face, let me focus on one. Each year, nearly 3 million people die from work-related causes. This is a silent crisis and a preventable one. Because behind every statistic is a person who had the right to return home safe. That is why we firmly believe that occupational safety and health is not only a technical matter, but also a core issue of social justice. A just society cannot exist where people are forced to choose between their livelihood and their life. Ensuring safe and healthy working conditions is part of the ILO's fundamental principles and rights at work. This year, the International Labour Conference adopted the first ever international labour standards on protecting workers from biological hazards, showing that when we act together, we can deliver real change. The session today, held under the auspices of the Coalition, will bring together voices from the government, the UN, the employers, workers, civil society, and occupational health experts to explore how we can build stronger, safer, and fairer systems of work. Today is more than a conversation. It is an opportunity to accelerate action, to share good practices, challenge assumptions, and shape concrete solutions. This is the responsibility and the promise of this coalition. This is about people's life. This is social justice in action. I wish you a very productive symposium, and I look forward to the outcomes of your inspiring discussions. Thank you.
So, social justice indeed. And let me now introduce the speakers of our first panel, and starting with Vanessa Harden-Witcher, Chief Executive from the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, IOSH. Also, like myself, suffering from the effects of extreme weather, and just arrived. We also have with you Mr. Sean-Kyu Kang, President of the International Commission on Occupational Health, ICO. We have as well Ms. Ana Ercoreca de la Cruz, President of the International Association of Labor Inspection, IALI. Ms. Ulrich Bollmann, a face that I think that we all know very well from all the years that she dedicated to the European Network of Education and Training in Occupational Safety and Health, ENETOSH. And Ms. Nancy Wilk, President of the International Occupational Hygiene Association, IOHA. As I'm not so sensitive to the effects of climate, and well, we are all suffering from it, I'll start exactly with Vanessa, even though I can see that Vanessa is still suffering very much from these effects. So Vanessa, IOSH was founded around 1945. Well, it has been around since 1945, and you have more than 50,000 members in at least 130 countries. That's impressive. So from your perspective as a global OSH professional body, how can occupational safety and health be more effectively integrated into broader policy frameworks? And what role do you see for professional networks like IOSH in driving this systemic change? So I would like you to expand on this for not more than 4 minutes, please.
if I can last that long. My apologies for being late. Thank you, Joachim. It's really my great honour to be with you this afternoon. And you are absolutely right. The foundations of IOSH were laid 80 years ago. And we actually just had a group of 60 very keen safety officers who were based in London in the UK. And they came together because they understood how vital it was to seek recognition and respect for our profession. They really wanted to develop and share knowledge, skills, expertise, and really importantly, have a unified voice that could influence policies and standards. So what you were saying really is from our birth. It goes to the heart of your questions, and I do think that occupational safety and health can only be integrated more effectively into broader policy frameworks if policies are developed in consultation with others, really sort of trying to draw on evidence, good practice, good standards of occupational safety and health, and that they're implemented and monitored by professionals. So we at IOSH believe that the most effective way to drive positive systemic change is through being the voice for OSH professionals. So we work with our members across many sectors, many specialisms, and as Joachim said, about 130 countries across the world to try and understand what OSH means for them and gain a common agreement around that. And then we represent their interests strategically and advocating on their behalf at a world level. So we make the argument that policymakers should adopt a holistic approach, bringing OSH professionals into the heart of decision-making and ensuring that regulations, incentives, educational initiatives reflect the value of safe work. We also believe that occupational safety and health must be recognised, not just as a standalone discipline, but actually as a fundamental pillar of sustainable development, economic resilience and, as we heard, social justice. And to achieve this, OSH has to be embedded within the core national and international policy frameworks across lots of different government areas, so labour, public health, education, environmental agendas. And it's important because this integration ensures that safe and healthy work is not just an afterthought, it's really a prerequisite for success and progress. And we found that when OSH is aligned with a wider policy agenda and with wider policy objectives, like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the fight then is to ensure workplaces protect their individuals and respect rights and freedoms. And there are real tangible benefits to that, things like improved productivity, reduced inequality, and enhanced well-being. Again, many of the agenda of the Global Coalition, which we're proud to be part of. Those early pioneers back in the 1940s established the structure of our institution, IOSH, and they made very early resolutions to improve the competence and efficiency of safety and health practitioners. And they soon realised that they had to liaise with other people, to collaborate with organisations, with agencies and with governments if they were really going to have some form of meaningful impact around safety and health improvements. As a professional institution, through advocacy, research, capacity building, we support multi-stakeholders, so governments, employers, workers, helping them all to implement effective OSH strategies. Our strategy, Activate 2028, really reinforces our commitment to collaboration, to innovate and to lead. We connect all of our members, so those 50,000 people across the world, and our partners together so that we can amplify that collective voice to influence policy and drive cultural change. And together we can ensure that occupational safety and health isn't just integrated into policy, but it's actually truly embedded in every aspect of working life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's working. Thank you so much, Vanessa. So you mentioned that it's so important to hear the voice of the OSH professionals. And ICO, Sean-Q, has been around even before the ILO. You were founded in 1906. So you have more than 2,000 members from more than 110 countries. And you also have a diversity, a very impressive diversity of technical and scientific committees dealing with different sorts of hazards. So given your strong focus on scientific research and global knowledge exchange, how can evidence-based approaches in occupational health be leveraged to influence broader public policies? And how can ICO help ensuring that occupational health remains a priority within the global development agendas?
Thank you, John. Yes, we established in 13 years ahead before ILO. And I'm impressed by this program. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, and ICO was established in 1906, in the 13 years before the ILO, and then I'm the president of the ICO International Commission on Occupational Health. And what is the EXPO? Let me ask you. EXPO serves a global platform for technological innovation and the future of human society. In the late 19th centuries, major technological advancement enabled the construction of the long-distance tunnel, some extending over 20 kilometers. During the construction of the first tunnel, the Goddard, around 200 workers died, lost their life, including 167 the deaths by occupational diseases. By contrast, when building the second tunnel, the simple one improved the control work environment and then result in no fatality from occupational diseases. To commemorate this milestone in worker safety and health, the first International Congress on Occupational Health was held in 1906, and bringing together professionals from various disciplines like physicians, nurses, and industrial hygienists, toxicology, epidemiology, the safety engineers, or ergonomics, and administrators. This is the origin and the legacy of ICO. Since then, ICO has held in the triennial Congress dedicated to protecting and promoting the workers' health. The most recent Congress was held in Marrakech, Morocco in 2024, and the next will be in Mumbai 2027, and followed by Rome, Italy in 2030. ICO membership, as Joachim said, include both individual and group members. And the group members typically national and public institution, as well as academic society and association in each country. So individual members include in the researchers and the academias and the practitioners and even administrators. And these members are actively engaged in 37 different scientific committees. This scientific committee covers the wide range of occupational health issues classified by the hazard and the organ system, discipline, industrial sectors, and the labor systems. Their scope spans from classical topics such as toxicology to emerging issues like precarious work or informal employment sectors. So as ICO members are actively engaged in research, they provide a scientific foundation needed to protect and improve workers' health. So let me give two examples. And the ILO and WHO have carried out several joint projects examining the link between work and diseases. And then one of the most notable being relationship between long working hours and the stroke. And ICO members played a key role in this research. The finding now widely recognized they show that long working hours increase the risk of the stroke by 35%. A powerful example of how science can inform policy and save lives. And the other example is the recent adoption of ILO Convention on Biological Hazard, C-192. ICO members contribute significantly to scientific groundwork that supported the convention. And one of these key contributions was published in the journal Safety and Health at Work, where I served as an editor-in-chief. So ICO, as an international non-governmental organization officially recognized by the ILO, will continue to work in close collaboration with ILO to improve the workers' health around the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Shankyu. So you mentioned, and I'm very happy that you mentioned that, our estimates that found a direct relation between working long hours, so 55 or more hours a week, and several, heart diseases. And this is, from one end, another proof that we do need more research and more evidence, but also another proof that indeed OSH is also related to other working conditions, including, working time, organization, etc. And so IALI is representing more than 100 lab inspectorates, lab inspection unions, lab inspection associations. So what's the voice of labor inspectors, or what should labor inspectors say when it comes to this relation between OSH, other working conditions, other public goods, and what is missing so that labor inspection can really play an active and effective role in helping to give practice to OSH and again to the broader vision of OSH as encompassing working conditions in general?
So, konnichiwa. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Thank you for the fantastic organization of the EXPO, and thank you for bringing us together. It's a very good week, and we are more than happy to be here. Thank you so much, Joaquin, for inviting us to participate at this ILO symposium. As the video was already saying, everybody has the right to return safely home. More than 2 billion people are suffering from bad conditions, and work accidents are neither determined by fate or are unavoidable. They always have causes, and they always can be prevented by a strong culture of OSH. OSH is a fundamental principle, and OSH, all the OSH professionals, the labor inspector, the OSH professional, the trade unions, the workers, they have to play a key role. This morning during this conference, Malcolm was saying that everybody can make a little change, and if we all together work in order to obtain this role, we can somehow make it. Sometimes as labor inspector, when we find out and when we go to a visit and we find out that someone has died, we find out that a family, a friend, and their life has been turned out. And that can be prevented and can be avoidable. And that's why we feel that sometimes it's a very bad day. A long time, the workers were very tired spending working hours, more than 10 hours a day. And they created a movement called 10 hours a day. And they stop and they say, we are not going to work more than 8 hours. So 8 hours for working, 8 hours for free time, and 8 hours for sleeping. But one of the most important issues was the creation of the factory inspectors. So they can go on site, they can go to the factory, and they can control whether the law has been applied or not. But as we see, and as we saw recently, the labor law has changed so quickly, and world of work is changing so quickly. During all these days, during the GISHW conference, we have been speaking about climate change. We have been speaking about informal economy, about the digital work, about the new forms of work, and we see that there are new and already challenges. For instance, in the climate change, as we see from labor inspector, it changes so many things. We are suffering for high temperatures. We are seeing that people are dying. For instance, in Spain, some workers have died for more than 40 degrees. So we have to pay attention. We also see that they're suffering for biological hazard. So that was very important that the ILO Convention was taken in place. And yesterday, I could read a report coming from EOSH, who was saying that up to 2 billion workers, more than 71% of working population, are exposed to excess heat every day. That means more than 9 of 10 workers' exposure to excess heat occurred outside of the heat wave. So new regulation, for instance, in Spain had to come into force, not only for the high temperature, but also for the floods, as you saw in Valencia. So workers, they need to know, and we have to help them, that they can go home if the temperature is very high, that it might be danger for their health if the temperature arrives more than 40 degrees. They can also go home and they won't get punished. They have their own salary if there's a flood and they cannot go. In Brazil, there's also a flood last year that was a very horrible conditions. And also the digital technology can help us. For instance, regarding the climate change, we can somehow have watches to control our temperature. We can have some vests to control our temperature. And labor inspector, we go to on site to control that they have water, they have rest, they have their proper clothes. We should not forget about the migrant workers, because migrant workers are the most suffering and vulnerable workers, because they leave their country behind. They're going to a new country, thinking they're going to find a better future to raise their children. And what is being said is new life, no shame, no fear, no risk. But sometimes what they find out is a completely nightmare. And that is why, because sometimes they need an economic revenue, so they have to accept whatever is being needed. In Brazil, the labor inspector has been dealing with slavery, and you have been done a wonderful job. And if the labor inspector will not be there, there will not be good working conditions. Sometimes they feel alone, and sometimes they also feel discrimination. Of course, looking for the future, we have seen how much the technology can help us to improve our standard of living. We have seen that with the mobile phone, we can book for a travel, we can work, we can do whatever we want to do. But also there's a lot of answers coming from the digital world. So sometimes it's good because we can prevent those others. We have seen it through the workshops during those days, the escalatons, or maybe to learn in the medical sector, in the climate change. All these related matters can help us to prevent those others and to prevent those working accidents. But as the professor was saying, we overwork. And sometimes digital is not helping us because we cannot disconnect. And that doesn't help us to improve our life and our health. So we should focus also in the mental health. And that's why not only labor inspector, but also all the professionals, we have to work together and close. And as Ayali, we are created in 1972. We are more than 100 members. And sometimes they see us as a bad part because we always enforce the law, we always comply the law. But I think that labor inspectors have to change also our mentality, because it's not only enforce the law, but also help them to comply the law. And I think that we need to be there. We need to help them. We need to work close with them, because everybody has a role to play. And the more we work together, the less accident it will be, and the better working condition will be, because at the end, it's our life, it's our planet, and it's our future. So we should take care of it.
Thank you so much, Anna. So a round of applause, please. Anna, you said that, and I couldn't agree more, of course, that an important role of labor inspectorates and labor inspectors is to inform employers and workers about applicable legislation, labor rights in general. And that is part of prevention, of course. But education, Ulrike, is also a very important part of prevention. And as a matter of fact, in our in the ILO's global strategy, there is a very important focus on what we would call a life cycle approach, in terms of embedding prevention into, even primary, the primary cycle of education, and then going through the life cycle into, high school, university, technical and vocational training, etc. So you have dedicated so many years of your life to Ocean education. So can you tell us a bit more of how can education and training systems be more strategically used to embed a culture of prevention and integrate OSH into lifelong learning, exactly as the ILO is saying? And the second question would be, how does an institution such as NETOSH, with members from at least 40 countries, envision the role of education in linking OSH with other SDG goals, please?
Thank you very much, Joachim, and let me thank you, first of all, for inviting Anatosh to this plenary, because I think that's not self-evident. We are a small, informal network, and here are the big players around me. But above all, I would like to thank you for the Shining Youth Congress yesterday, Jukka. Thank you, which took place in the Shining Hall at EXPO. That was really great. And in response to your question about a more strategic approach to integrating occupational safety and health into the education system, therefore I'm in a different area, and creating a culture of prevention, there we have the link, I took two things away from the Youth Congress yesterday. Firstly, that the fundamental prerequisite is a recognition of the dignity of all living beings. Or, as was said and sung yesterday, everyone carries a jewel within them. Very impressive. I will take this at home. Secondly, how important it is to give young people the opportunity to devote themselves seriously to a meaningful task, to develop solutions for the current challenges for OSH. And I think their recommendations yesterday for actions on safety, health and well-being in face of the current challenges were really convincing. From an OSH perspective, we can be very satisfied with these results. But this is not the case from an educational perspective. A strategic approach to integrating OSH into education must go one step further and recognize safety, health, and well-being as a foundation of good education. This means that safety, health, and well-being are not ends in themselves. And there I'm in contradiction to all of the other panelists here, but that the goal of integrating OSH into the education system is good education. A strategic approach must, for example, speak the languages of schools, of teachers, and take into account the interrelationship between the quality of education and safety and health. And to quote Peter Paulus, he's sitting here, last row, blue shirt, healthy teachers teach better and healthy students learn better. That's really self-evident. However, this requires OSH to go beyond its professional boundaries and work together with public health and education. And coming to your second question, you are right. For more than 20 years, Anatosh, a formerly European, but now global network with members from, I think, only 4 continents, has been committed to promoting education and the importance of the education sector in the area of occupational safety and health. And in addition to SDG 4, quality education, SDG 3 and SDG 8 are particularly important in Anatosh's work. For example, Peter Paulus, he is responsible for a project where we are linking and working together with the UNESCO Chair Global Health and Education to build a bridge between Anatosh and SDG 3, good health and well-being. With regard to SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, we have conducted a study as a task group of the ILO's Global OSH Coalition on the integration of SDG 8 into study programs in OSH-related disciplines at universities in Europe. The results of this first phase of our project were published in the journal Occupational Medicine. And immediately when I'm back at home from Osaka, we will complete the publication on the results of our follow-up study on the integration of SDG 8 in universities in 7 African countries. based on our close relationship and collaboration with the network OSH Africa. With regard to the issue of social inequality that you raised at the end of your second question, equal educational opportunities are the lever for reducing social inequality. In this respect, the topic is also of particular importance for the network ENETOSH, and we look forward with interest to the further activities of ILO's new Global Coalition for Social Justice.
Thank you so much, Ulrike. So a round of applause, please, for Ulrike. And let me now move to Nancy. Nancy, IOHA represents 43 organizations and more than 20,000 occupational hygienists worldwide. So given your expertise in hazard prevention and control, how can occupational hygiene contribute more visibly to public health and environmental sustainability agendas, especially in the context of the SDGs? This would be the first question. The first question is similar to what I asked the other panelists. So what steps are needed to strengthen the role of occupational hygiene in our global efforts to address challenges that relate to OSH and go beyond occupational safety and health?
Thank you, Joaquin, and good afternoon, everyone. Occupational hygiene plays a key role in public health, as work is a health determinant and exposures at work are health determinants. As well, occupational hygiene plays a role of primary prevention of occupational disease and harm. And occupational hygiene, in fact, is a driver for social and environmental sustainability. So one simple way that occupational hygiene can contribute and be more visible with regards to public health is to partner with allied professionals. Globally, regionally, and locally, there are many opportunities to do this, and our 43 member associations often take this on. The benefits include more holistic and integrated approaches to occupational health, because we know that health is a continuum and it takes into consideration exposures at work as well as non-occupational exposures. And specifically, advancing the prevention of occupational disease and worker well-being. Other benefits, diverse perspectives and innovative solutions, and the very much needed increased visibility of the importance of occupational health and hygiene. With public health and the Sustainable Development Agenda, occupational hygiene has a shared focus, and the focus is that of human capital or people. So including their health and well-being, and specifically the health and well-being of workers. And clearly, when we support workers, we support their families and we support their communities. There is good alignment between occupational hygiene and the aims of the Sustainable Development Agenda and select Sustainable Development Goals. For example, there are connections between poverty reduction, health, decent work, universal health coverage, workforce health, and worker well-being. There's a shared importance of caring for workers and investing in workforces such that they are resilient, and I will add anti-fragile. It's a new word, look it up, very powerful, safe and healthy. There are shared aims regarding decent work, and that includes safe work, hazard reduction, and providing health care. And these measures protect workers and foster a sustainable and more productive workforce. Some specific examples of efforts to advance select goals include introduction of good occupational health and hygiene management to advance goals 1 and 2, no poverty and zero hunger. Occupational health services that include occupational hygiene to provide safe and healthy working conditions, those that are free from physical and mental harm and supportive of individual health and well-being inside and outside of work to advance Goal 3, good health and well-being. And occupational hygiene supports inclusion and belonging, and Goal 5. So gender equality and provision of physically and psychologically sustainable working environments for women and other demographics that would fall under diversity. Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. This includes being able to go to work and not become ill because of one's work. And the fundamental principles and rights that are tied to this goal include a safe and healthy working environment and improved basic labor standards across global supply chains and eradicating practices of forced labor, human trafficking, and child labor. So working in occupational hygiene to advance the SDGs is a great opportunity to better protect workers, to prevent disease, and to improve well-being everywhere. So to get to your second question, which actually is more loaded than the first, but steps that are needed to strengthen the role of occupational hygiene in global efforts, there are many. We need to build capacity in occupational hygiene. So the International Occupational Hygiene Association, or IOHA, of which I am president, we are the keeper of a national accreditation recognition scheme. So of our 43 members, 18 of those are countries that offer national accreditation in the discipline of occupational hygiene. IOHA sets those standards, and those associations must meet those standards. I will tell you the math. We have globally just over 8,300 accredited occupational hygienists. If you compare that to the 3.6 billion worker population, according to the World Bank, that's 2 parts per million, 2 hygienists for every million working population. And we know that distribution is not homogeneous. And so we have many, or a lot less, in a lot lower number in other geographies. So we also need better anticipation and recognition of the stressors on workers that are related to the rapid changes to which they're currently exposed. And I call this the silent cry. This is something that we are not hearing, we are not seeing or feeling. And so we need to get better at anticipating and recognizing the stress that workers are under with regards to the rapid change in the workplace. We need new models. Many of them are outdated. We need integrated, holistic approaches if we are to see improvement at the prevention of chronic non-communicable occupational disease. And the majority of these are preventable, as well as improved worker well-being. Currently, we have insufficient research, standards, and guidance that represent our diverse global workforce. The majority of occupational health research is based on default man. This is someone who's 25 to 30 years old, 70 kilos, Caucasian, does not represent the majority of humanity. We need to align with the needs of people and the communities that we serve. We need to address weak or non-existent regulatory frameworks. And we need the ratification and implementation of the ILO conventions that are occupational safety and health related. And that's 155, 161, 171, and 187. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Let me just compliment what Nancy just said. Yes, we need to ratify all of those conventions, but as well, the new convention on biological hazards, number 192, just adopted some weeks ago. So thank you so much to all of you. Let me then ask you, before you leave the stage, if you can call this a stage, imagine that these ladies and gentlemen in front of you are part of a national parliament of a very powerful country. So you have 1 minute to give them one single powerful argument on why should OSH be at the forefront of their political agendas. So what would you say? Anna, starting with you.
Thank you so much. So if I were in front of my labor ministry, or if I were in front of the politicians, I would rather say it's worth it. It's worth to invest in the people. It's worth to take care for the people, for the future. And I will rather ask them to make it simple, because sometimes labor regulations are difficult to understand. So in order to be simple, in order to be compliant, and in order to have a future, I would rather ask them to make it simple. I will also say to the enterprise that it's worth it also. It's not expenses, it's an investment, because a company with bad condition, they can no longer have a future. If you invest in the people, if you care about OSH, you will have a future, and your employees will be happier, and you will have a secure living standard. And if I will have a worker, as you said, that training is very important, I will rather remind them that OSH is a secure of life, is the difference between living or not, and how important it is to know the law, to invest in personal equipment, and how important it is to take care of your own self, your family, and to go back home safely. So I would rather say to all stakeholders, it is worth it.
To go back home safely indeed. Ulrike.
I would like to add, safety and health are the foundation of good education. And without good education, there can be no social justice.
Nancy.
We are not effectively preventing occupational disease, injury, or fatality. Each year, approximately 3 million workers die from a work-related cause, and another 374 million are injured at work. Annually, this cost globally is 6% of the world's GDP. That's over $5 trillion US. We must do better. We need you to invest in the safety, health, and well-being of workers, to have strong and successful workforces, businesses, sectors, and economies. When we invest in workers, in prevention, we invest in communities, in improved public health, reduced healthcare costs, we increase productivity and economic growth. When we do this, we invest in the future. We future-proof our communities, and we leave no one behind. No one should get sick or die because of their job.
Thank you. I think we're going to sound very similar. So I think statistics talk, all you politicians out there. So I talk about the fact that 7,600 people die from work-related causes worldwide every single day. That's 1 every 12 seconds. So I can't calculate how many have died in the time that we've been together, but it's tragic. And it's not just a tragedy. Actually, as politicians, you need to realise that that crisis is undermining your nation's stability, its social justice, and perhaps because money talks, its competitiveness. It's always the poor that suffer the most, and public trust in government erodes with every single preventable life that's lost. And you can change it. The power is with you. You have the influence to change things. And I'd say a couple of examples from the UK to Finland to Singapore, all quoting statistics about how doing this well can really reduce the number of deaths. So I think statistics really talk. It's so important that we make this a national priority because it can really strengthen economies, make them more competitive, and importantly, be cohesive. So the lesson's clear. For all you politicians, decisive leadership to guarantee safe and healthy work saves lives and builds lasting prosperity.
I would say occupational health is not just about in the workers' health or human rights issue. It's a national imperative. Without healthy workers, there can be no strong economy, no violent society. If you want your country to thrive, you must invest in occupational health. And through ICO, you have the global expertise to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if I count all together the number of organizations that you represent, we have some thousands in here, correct? And professionals even more. So good to hear this common approach coming from the OSH professionals. So final round of applause to all of you.
So can I add one more thing? In the general, when I attend in the OSH conference, OSH, the things, and then we say occupational safety and health. But then we write in the occupational safety and health, but actually there's only safety issues. And we usually ignore the real health problem. So but sometimes we say the mental health. But then think about that. Lots of the workers died of the cardiovascular disease, long working hours, some job stress, and then respiratory disease caused by the different dust or something. That there's lots of the work-related cancers, but we generally ignore this one. So I just emphasize everybody, you are here. When you say occupational safety and health, please think of the health. Thank you.
Indeed, according to our estimates, 90% of fatalities related to work are because of work-related diseases. As a matter of fact, I think, correct?
Hello, my name is Svetlana Boinchan, and I am from the IUF, which is the Global Union Federation representing workers in agriculture, food processing, and hotel sectors. So I'm responsible in the IUF for the agriculture. Agriculture is one of the 3 most dangerous sectors to work in, along construction and mining, and is the biggest employment sector, which means 1 billion of workers, and around 450 million are waged workers. So for us, it's a dream to have labor inspectors coming in agriculture. And when I'm in these meetings, for me, it's difficult then to put the puzzle together with the knowledge, with what exists. And then when I go to plantations and farms, like I go 2 centuries ago, the way the working conditions and the living conditions are, we still have to struggle to fight with the employers on the basic access to drinking water and water for sanitation at plantations. Labor inspection in agriculture is non-existent in many countries. And in countries where the labor inspectors exist, they would say they are a small team, whether they will say, my colleagues, that they don't have money to buy the fuel because you need to travel kilometers, or that they said that they will go only when there is a fatal case. So I would really love to know and do an invitation. Please come to rural area. It doesn't matter what country. Please come to agriculture. We need you. And there is an ILO Convention on Health and Safety in Agriculture, 184. And unfortunately, it has only 23 ratifications. The governments who are here, please ratify, because agricultural workers produce the food for everybody of us. And they are dying today, not only because of pesticides and machinery as they did, they are dying today more and more because of heat in developing and in developed country. And it's not about really how rich is the employer. There are quite workers who are producing quite expensive goods, but still there is not much attention to their health and safety in agriculture. So please come to rural area, please come to agriculture. We need you.
Well, before moving to the second panel, I'm not sure if someone wants to add something to this. We'll have some time, hopefully, for a short space for Q&A before ending the session with both the panels. But I think Anna wants to react to this remark about labor inspection, don't you, Anna?
So thank you so much for your question. Every single week we do visits to the agriculture site. And our colleague was saying sometimes we find out that they are vulnerable workers because they do not speak our language. They do not know the labor law. So we have to help them. And we send them letters with the information. We meet some webinars with the trade unions, with the employees. We just let them know how hazardous the conditions might be. We have developed a guide from the labor inspector to say how they have to do the risk assessment, how important to give them water, to give them the personal equipment, and how important it is to have a rest. And if it's getting so hot, for instance, in Spain, if it's a red or orange alarm and the temperature will go higher than 40 degrees and they do not have a collective or personal equipment, they are entitled to go home. And sometimes when we go, for instance, 2 weeks ago, someone told me, yeah, but we need to work because otherwise the fruit will go bad. But you cannot work in that conditions. You have to make it good. And you have to prepare the workers so they cannot suffer from the heat because sometimes they might die. And sometimes what they find out is that they're using another paper, so there are illegal workers, there are informal economy, they are more vulnerable. So yes, you're right, we have to do more. But we will be more than happy from IALI to do a training session with your labor inspectors and help you whatever is being needed from IALI. So thank you so much.
And of course, to liaise with the unions in the sector. Let me now call again. Thank you to all of you for being there with us, and let me call, without further ado, the second panel to the table. Yeah, they'll stay with us, so any question that you may have, they'll be able to reply to it before. So with us, we'll have Mr. Saul Guerrero Ateiza, Director at UNICEF's Asia Pacific Pillar Office. Not sure if Mr. Brian Riley from ADB could make it here today. I haven't seen him around. Maybe not. Also, well, let's go. We have Linnea Wikström, the Global Director for Construction and Health and Safety from the Building and Woodworkers International. We have Mr. Pierre Vicentini, Special Advisor at the International Employers Organization. We have with us Mr. Guilherme Schuch-Candemil, Head of the International Affairs Department from the Brazilian Labor Inspectorate. He has accepted last minute to replace Mr. Zhao Li from the US Department of Labor that unfortunately could not make it to Osaka. And we also have Ms. Yuka Ujita, who is replacing also Ms. Manal Aziz, an ILO colleague that had some health issues and had to go back to Geneva earlier than expected. So we have with us, a different sector within the UN. We have the employers, we have the workers, we have a government, and we have the ILO. I would start with Mr. Ateiza. First of all, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. So UNICEF, we all know, works very much with children's rights. So how can we better integrate child rights in youth development into occupational safety and health strategies, especially in relation to the SDGs on education and poverty reduction, so that OSH contributes not only to safer workplaces, but also to more just and equitable societies for the future generations.
Thanks, Joachim. Thanks for the invitation to be here today, and for ILO for its continuing commitment to putting children and young people at the heart of this agenda. It's much appreciated. From the perspective of children and young people, OSH is not just a technical question, it's a moral and strategic imperative. And I think a lot of the comments and suggestions that we would bring today are very much from that perspective, from the perspective of children and young people. And if you look at OSH from the perspective of young people, there's three things that immediately would stand out in terms of what we need to do better. The first is to tackle hazardous child labor as a failure of OSH, right? There's 138 million children in child labor today, and 50 million of those in hazardous conditions. These are not just labor violations, they are a development emergency. So we need to start our OSH strategies before employment. Some of the previous panelists addressed this. We need to start looking at the question of what are the root causes of child labor and really start working on whether it's poverty and exclusion or lack of access to education. That is a critical part of ensuring that child labor, and especially hazardous conditions, or children working in hazardous conditions, reduce over time. The second thing, which we think is really important, is the protection for young workers, especially in the informal economy. Many adolescents of legal working age enter unsafe informal jobs without any OSH training or any legal protection. Since once they are inside the workplace, they're excluded from workplace safety systems, complaints and grievance mechanisms. And they really don't have a good understanding of what are their basic rights and entitlements under labor law. Our sense is that we therefore need to really start the question of OSH from an educational perspective and creating safe school-to-work transitions. As children go from schools into the workplace, they need to know what their rights are, right? That's the only way that they can start being aware of those rights and start demanding them. We need legal and policy frameworks that extend OSH protections to that informal sector, because we know that many of the young people entering the workspace do so in that particular part of the work sectors. And Finally, and again, Joachim, you touched on this before, and some of the other panelists did so as well, we need to take a life cycle approach. Education, safety, and decent work are interconnected and need to be treated as such. We cannot deal with it in isolation. And it feels really, really important, as I mentioned before, to embed OSH in education and youth development, so that we can build some of these principles and ideas into their curricula, as well as some of the support that they get given as they enter the workplace. It is occupational safety and health is not just about regulation and about safety mechanisms. It's a question of dignity, and I think you touched on this, and agency and intergenerational justice. When we align these OSH strategies with the rights and needs of children and young people, we're not just preventing harm, we are investing in human potential, we are breaking cycles of poverty, and we're building more equitable and resilient societies.
Thank you so much. And you notice that we have a newcomer to the table, which I forgot to announce. Apologies for this, William. So we have with us William Cockburn, the executive director at the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work. Welcome, William. So I'll continue with Guilherme. Guilherme, Brazil is a country with very well-known practices, good practices on occupational safety and health, and also what we could call an integrated approach that considers OSH and other working conditions. So can you tell us more about the experience in Brazil and give some examples of how you have this approach that considers working conditions, broadly speaking?
Sure. Thank you, Joaquin, for the question. Good afternoon to all. It's a pleasure to be here. So I will give you two examples of how Brazil is integrating OSH to our national public policies. The first one is we are still developing. It's regarding human rights and business, following the UN principles for business and human rights, and also the IOCD guidelines for multinational enterprises. What we are doing now, we just finished the first draft, so we're still in the government phase. We're going to have the public consultation, and we hope that by the end of the year, we'll be able to launch this public policy. So what we did now in this government phase, we were able to put OSH as one of the main goals of this human rights and business policy that we are creating. So we are putting OSH, integrating with human rights and all our other business issues. So this for us is an advance, and we think that this policy will be a game changer for us when we publish it. And the second example that I would like to give here, and actually Anna already mentioned a little bit in her speech before, it's how, and this is actually really interesting because we are doing this for many years right now. It's how we link OSH with our modern slavery policy. So in Brazil, our modern slavery policy, we have four main indicators. So when we can combine them, or we can find only one of them, of these indicators, so we can characterize as a modern slavery situation. One of these indicators is the degrading working conditions indicators. And what is the degrading working condition indicator? So, for example, when in the workplace we do not have drinking water for the workers, or when the workers they have to stay for many days or weeks in that workplace, so the accommodation it's a really dirty accommodation. They don't have the workers. They do not have bed, or they have to sleep in the floor. Usually, it is really bad places, dirty places where there is infiltration. So when it's raining, the workers have to sleep with water, or sometimes we have even like insects, like spiders, and in the rural areas we have sometimes snakes in these accommodations, or the workers they do not have a place to shower in that accommodation, so they have to go to rivers or to lakes toilets, to bath themselves, to clean themselves. Or, for example, they have to use the same clothes to work when they're putting like pesticides in the crops. And then they go to this accommodation, they don't have a place to put these clothes and change it for new ones, and they have to sometimes sleep with these clothes. So when our labor inspectorates, they go to the field, especially rural areas, and they find this kind of situation, we characterize this situation as a degrading working situation. And then we have the labor inspectors, we have to rescue these workers, and we characterize as a modern slavery condition. And this is how we integrate this, because this usually is OSH conditions, degrading conditions. So we integrate these OSH conditions with our modern slavery policies. So yeah, these are the two examples.
Guilherme, that was a very powerful example. Svetlana, maybe you want to have a bilateral with Guilherme later on to learn more about the Brazilian experience. William, Europe has been at the forefront of research on occupational safety and health legislation. You're responsible for OSHA. And so, given your work at the intersection of research, policy, and practice, how can your agency support evidence-based prevention and knowledge sharing that would inform global efforts to strengthen occupational safety and health within the broader framework of the SDGs? I think Pierre wants to say something before you take the floor.
No, it wasn't switched on.
It's working, isn't it?
We've overcome that digital challenge. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to say a few words about the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work. We're only 30 years old compared to some of these very long-standing organizations, and we're very small. We're just 65 people. But I think our strength is working through networks, and that's very powerful. I think another element that's very powerful, and that's referring here to having a high-level framework, and the SDGs provide that framework. They give direction, and they allow coordination and cooperation and cross-policy working. And within Europe, the SDGs are then further, more specifically declined into the European Pillar of Social Rights, again, fostering cross-policy working, which is so important. I think when occupational safety and health is often seen as quite a technical issue and an add-on. And then more specifically, we've got, for example, the European Strategic Framework on Occupational Safety and Health, and that influences occupational safety and health strategies at national level. So you can see how the guiding star, the compass of the SDGs, in the end, has this practical effect. Within the current strategic framework, we're looking at three key transitions, which we've heard a lot about yesterday and today: the climate transition, digitalization, and the aging of the workforce. Coming to the role of EU OSHA, I mean, that's in three main areas, three pillars, if you like, to action. The first one is carrying out analysis and research. So we run some wide-scale surveys, interviewing, for example, the person responsible for health and safety in a workplace. How do they manage day-to-day risks? Interviewing workers about outcomes, about their experiences of different risks in the workplace. And that allows us to draw lessons. We're talking about the European Union consisting of 27 member states. We have the advantage of a common legislative framework, and that allows us to learn from the data. We can identify what policies, what strategies, what regulations are more successful in what settings and why, and we can share that. And that also informs our second main area of working, and that's where we're closer to the workplace. We're looking for examples of good practices. We're looking for examples of guidance and tools. And one example, for example, is the online interactive risk assessment tool, a web-based tool targeting small businesses to help them step by step through the risk assessment process for a specific sector or risk or occupation. That was developed in the Netherlands about 20 years ago. we made that a common platform and assisted development, and it's now taken up in 18 countries, and there's approaching 400 different sector occupation-specific tools. And it's open source. It's available for anyone to take it up. And the third pillar is awareness raising. So running large-scale campaigns. I think it's important, obviously, that we inform ourselves, like this event, about risks, about measures, about all the rest of it, but that these campaigns also speak beyond our world and get our message across to new audiences. And finally, networking and the strength of building strong networks. I mentioned that we're a very small organization. We wouldn't be able to achieve anything if it wasn't for the national focal points in each of the countries that consist of the national institute or authority, the trades unions, and the employer organizations. And we've heard repeatedly about how crucial that is to success in OSH, whether it's at the company level or whether it's at the policy-making level. And maybe I'll just finalize by saying, on a cross-cutting manner, we need to focus on occupation safety and health for women. As we heard earlier, that's still something that is a pending task, even in Europe, and also a focus on small businesses. It's all very well to speak about engaging employers, and there are so many examples of well-engaged employers, very proactive, but our research shows that where the problems lie are in that significant proportion of small businesses that either don't know about OSH, or they're so focused on surviving from one month to the other, for example, at the sharp end of a supply chain, that they have no resources to dedicate to occupational safety and health. And there we need to focus on how do we engineer these supply chains to work effectively. ILO has done a lot on that. And how do we support businesses with tools and guidance and good knowledge? Thank you.
William. So this is a very good entry point for the employers. Pierre, the employers and companies are under growing scrutiny in terms of due diligence, supply chains, social and environmental frameworks. So how would you say that employer organizations and employers themselves could have an active role in leading, and reframing OSH not just as a compliance issue, but as something that is core to the business and a real driver for competitiveness? And what should be expected from the private sector in this new, very complex environment that we all live in?
Well, thank you, Joachim, for this opportunity to share our perspective. And good afternoon, everyone. Well, I think we all agree on the fact that the changes and global uncertainties in which we are living pose many challenges. And I think in this context, we must ask ourselves, what more can we do? How can we work together better, using our different capacities in an appropriate way? But let me start in responding to your question by highlighting a cornerstone of the ILO action. I think that many of you are aware of it, and I think Nancy referred to it in her presentation. In 2022, the ILC adopted, this. The ILO constituents and employers play a huge role in this. Adopted the ILC resolution on including a safe and healthy working environment in the ILO's framework of fundamental principles on right at work. And this resolution states that a safe and healthy working environment requires the active participation of, governments, employers, and workers. So employers are not alone. And I must recall that the direct obligation of international labor standards lie with member states, not with company. But still, the private sector is doing a lot to ensure that, the practices and policies, OSH policies and practice aim for a safe and healthy working environment. And they respect the fundamental principles. So coming now to the role of the IOE and the employer organizations, they have carried out awareness raising campaigns on the critical importance of OSH, and precisely building on this momentum. And they also support members in staying informed about innovative developments and evolving risks in OSH to adapt effectively to a changing world of work. And when there is a new regulation, like is the case really recently in Japan, with this regulation on heat stroke, it was, I think it's effective as 1st June, so recent. Our member, Kane Darren, they held a big meeting, gathering all the business representatives, including SMEs and MSMEs. And thanks, William, to highlight that, because they are the one most struggling with OSH requirements. So Kinderen helped these companies to comply, in a timely and smooth manner, but also, strengthen the business response. So it's important. So overall, employer organization not just see OSH as a compliance issue, but as essential to business performance, business success, and it's a component of productivity. What are companies doing? They have been taking the appropriate measures based on risk assessments, providing information and expert support, investing in ongoing training and adopting new technologies. So all that strengthens the workplace safety and health. But as you said, Joachim, it's true that all that happened under greater public scrutiny and by growing stakeholder pressure on companies coming from customers, consumers, clients, but also suppliers. And companies have been updating their policy commitments, and of course, with the necessary involvement of the top management. They are making sure that OSH is embedded in their due diligence process, and that internal grievance mechanisms include elements linked to OSH. And also, companies are prepared to report externally, to potentially report and communicate also on how they address OSH issue. Many companies also include OSH in their business code of conduct, and they are updating it according to the new to the principle attached to the new ILO fundamental conventions. So again, they not only comply with all applicable environmental and health and safety laws and regulations, but they operate in a manner that actively manage risks and opportunities associated with them. They surely also expect their suppliers and contractors to protect the health and safety and well-being of their people, visitors, and all of those who can be affected by their activities. Actually, employers spend billions on OSH every year. So, beyond pure numbers, they are engaging daily in, driving and further improving health and safety in the workplace. And as I said in the beginning, employers are not alone. So we need governments and workers also, because they have an important role to play. And I believe that, and this is my final word, that strong cooperation is needed now more than ever. And for this, and it was a word in your presentation, trust is key. Thank you.
Trust is key indeed. Pierre Linnea, you're representing here the global voice of workers. What a big responsibility. So what do we need to do to go beyond basic OSH protections and to be sure that we are really addressing the real needs of workers everywhere?
Yeah, thank you. It's big shoes to fill, especially in this conference, because there's not that many workers actually represented. And I think maybe that's not really pushing beyond basics, but we really need to ensure that the basics are met. And what we often see, that we heard speakers yesterday talk about the importance of social dialogue, and many forget that the civic space and for freedom of association is really shrinking in many countries. We have more informal workers. We have people that do not dare speaking up. And if we don't first start with the freedom of association, which might many forget that that is a part of OSH, then we won't have the workers being able to speak up. And just as Pierre said, if you don't have the workers as a part of the process, OSH management systems will never work. And I think we need to start there, because we had also many in the opening remarks yesterday saying, oh, we need to have a CEO on board. Yeah, it's great to have a CEO on board. But if you don't hear from the workers, they are the only ones that's on the site every day. So I come from the construction sector, and what we really see is when we talk about pushing beyond basics, it is really to have a holistic view on when you look at OSH issues. So this means that a construction project, very little can be fixed when the project is up and running and the budget and the planning is already done. So what we really need to think about is to have social dialogue, inclusion of trade unions, workers' voices from the beginning of the project. Because, and this is also putting pressure on everyone and using everyone's leverage. Because if the client doesn't set a realistic budget, the contractor, the employer, will never be able to do the OSH measures needed. If the inspector don't have access to the site or the safeguards are not there in place, we will also not have the correct assessments. So what we really start talking about more and more, and we'll mention it a bit tomorrow when we talk with the financiers and the multilateral development banks that we work very actively with, is before we just talked about when it comes to OSH, workers comes in maybe as an OSH committee. You have some safety rep on the site. But that is way too late. So when we want to push beyond basics, we need to consider the budgeting, the timeline. For a construction project, every construction project, and I do inspections in construction for more than 10 years, you work extensive overtime. It's just how it works. You do 8+2 or 8+4. And I always say, I know that 24 hours can be divided into 3 shifts just as well as 2 shifts. But you always have 2 shifts. So we really need to start discussing, looking at all of those aspects. If you do a timeline for a project, can you actually deliver that within ordinary working hours? Because if we don't consider the overtime, then we're going to miss that injuries happens when workers are tired. When we have climate change, we have extreme weather, we're going to have more and more lost working time. How do we ensure that this is a part of the planning? How are we sure that this is a part of the budgeting? Because we're going to have lost working time. Who's paying the salaries? If you have informal workers that work on a daily basis, they lose their income when there's a work stoppage. So we all talk about, okay, we need to stop work when it's too warm. Okay, but who carries that cost? So these really is about pushing beyond the basics. And then I think it comes back to everything from ensuring supply chains. Who has the power in the supply chain? How do we make sure for a construction site, a subcontractor will not be the one that's going to be able to manage the health and safety on the site? So how do we make sure that there's contractors, the primary contractors keep the responsibility? We talk a lot about, okay, SMEs won't have the capacity. Yeah, but they're almost always a part of a value chain. So the one that has the capacity needs to have the responsibility to ensure that the workplace is safe. And then also making sure that the skills are there to assess your risk. Because we talk about training, maybe having an induction training. Okay, that is about wearing your protective boots. Maybe if you're a good site, wearing the harness, thinking about fall protection. But I like what the speaker added on the end of the last panel is there's very few induction, and I do an induction on every site I visit that actually consider the health aspects. Okay, how do you control in 5 years from now that you have a kidney disease, and that could actually be a part of what the risk you had on this site? So how do we ensure this more broad awareness? And then lastly, just because so many has talked about mental health the last days, mentioned it, but I think it's really important because in construction, we don't have data from many countries, but in Australia, a construction worker is 10 times more likely to die from suicide than from a fatal accident. He's also 6 times more likely to die from asbestos-related health issues than a fatal accident. And still, we put so much effort on the safety and very little on the health. So if we want to push beyond the basics, we need to have all of these steps in place. The workers having freedom of association, the full supply chain and project planning from the beginning, conception, budgeting, but also how do we include health aspects?
Thank you so much, Lina. You mentioned so many important things, and let me take note, especially of what you referred to, the lack of skills or qualified expertise in construction sites, and the same applies to other workplaces. And this is also what Nancy was saying in terms of occupational hygienists. And I know that there's an ICO study some years ago that found that even in developed countries, less than 50% of workplaces have occupational health services. And this drops up to less than 20% in developing countries. So this is the state of affairs that we have. And this leads me to a question I have that I'll address to Yuka. Yuka, you have worked in ILO Geneva at the headquarters. You have been working in Bangkok for some years now. You work with 20-something countries. So OSH is now a fundamental principle right at work, but we still see so many gaps and weaknesses in our member states. So what's missing? What should be done so that progress moves a bit faster?
Okay, interesting. Good. All right. So yes, actually the recognition of safe and healthy working environment as fundamental principle right at work is the landmark, the movement, the achievement. And then now, Convention 155, 187 is the fundamental, the conventions. But in practice, actually the ratification of the convention is not the magic solution. Even though the member states ratify the convention, for tomorrow, the safety and health is improved. No. Actually, the application and the implementation is more important. And that is the gap, the big gap. Then the ILO provide the technical assistance to member states to the policy level or the legal level. At the same time, we provide the intervention, the assistance at the workplace level. That combination is the very, very important. And always we need the support from our social partners, the employers and government. But actually these days, especially in this region, ASEAN and Pacific, is this decision by the ILO member states is the very strong engine. Now is the big movement we can see in this region. And very interesting, each of the constituents, government, employers, and workers, each of them recognize the needs and importance of the OSH, and they take action actually. In terms of the government, to ratify the convention, apply the convention, they need to change, they need to update the OSH law. Not only the OSH law, they need to improve the enforcement system and also compliance mechanism. So that is the very big, the sequence of the actions. And the employers now recognize the benefit of the safer and healthier working environment to their business. So in this region, responsible business conduct or the business and human rights is a kind of trend. And for example, in Japan, many of you know the Kenko Kei. Kenko Kei is a kind of maybe the Keidaren-san is know very well. That is supported by the government to improve the safe and healthy working environment and that is the contribute to the business. And in fact, it works, no? And it's not only in Japan. Many other countries have that kind of initiative to support the business and the safety and health. And thanks to OSHA, you have the excellent research project, financial, what is that? Incentives of the safety and health. So now is the very good, this kind of activities getting together. And also the workers, they recognize they need to improve their capacity of workers themselves, not they listen, not ask the employer to take action, but workers themselves, they need to increase their capacity to take action by themselves. So these actions are ongoing now, but Joachim, the ILO cannot do everything, right? We need assistance, we need help from the old professionals. So this morning, Mariana, the World Assembly, you got together and the declaration of the foundation. And now we have the support from the old professional associations. So this is the very good moment. So that's
Thank you so much, Yuka. And congratulations for the declaration. I think that's a major step, for the promotion of occupational safety and health. I'm not sure if you want to say something about the Japanese example. I think you can speak in Japanese if you want.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak. Let me make a few comments on the explanation of Yuka-san, Ujita-san. Yeah, indeed, in Japan, maybe the correct English name is health management or something. Yeah, it's very famous for the big companies in Japan, and this is a viewpoint from the investment. That because these activities is organized by METI. It's not a Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare. But what is an important point is how to make a good environment of the occupational safety and health. Labor law is a regulation for the company, so a bit status a bit very different. Because health management is a kind of investment, but we are in same direction. We are looking same direction. So this is very important. So, but there are difficult point because health management is it takes a lot of cost also. So small medium companies cannot do that like big companies, but we big companies and small medium companies has a good relationship. It's like a supply chain, So we want to encourage as an employer side. Thank you very much for giving me.
Thank you so much. And a bit of marketing here because we are speaking about financing. Join us tomorrow for our session on sustainable OSH funding. And let me finish this panel before moving to the Q&A. I think we still have around 10 minutes. Just asking also for a bold statement, not more than 1 minute. So we are already thinking of beyond 2030. In terms of the UN goals, etc. So now imagine that this is an assembly that is going to prepare these new goals at the UN level. So what would you recommend so that OSH is forefront in terms of global commitments? Maybe starting with Saul.
Thank you. Yeah, for us, the answer to that question is easy. No child should be forced to work in unsafe or exploitative conditions, period. Right? The new generation of OSH commitments should have zero tolerance for hazardous child labor and universal protection for young workers, right? I guess our assumption is that the only way we're going to get to a point like that is if we tackle the question of the ambition of OSH to not only continue to operate and develop as a technical field, but also to start being seen as a core pillar of human development. From a youth, or a young person's perspective, and from a rights perspective, protecting young people in the workplace isn't just a question of safety, it's a question of justice, and it needs to be treated like that.
A core pillar of human development, indeed. Linnea, do you agree with this?
I think it's quite easy now to answer after you, because I could just change shall to worker. So I will read, what did you say? No worker should be forced to work in unsafe or exploitative conditions. Why do we limit it only to the children? I think I also want to add one aspect, and that is to be aware about what is an unsafe and exploitative condition. Because the problem is that many of our workers are so in such an informal position with so little awareness that they don't know what is an unsafe and exploitative condition. And if you don't know, then you can't stop working and you can't protest it. Because what we really see on many sites, this is too long, but really short is someone said, yeah, but he wants to work 7 days a week. Yeah, because he thinks that's the only way to earn more money. But because many people don't know that, okay, but you should force to earn more money on the safe hours. So really having that awareness needs to be included. But otherwise, I completely settle for no one should be forced to work in unsafe conditions.
Information is power indeed. Pierre.
Okay. I will start by the red line, because for employers, red line, I think that also Kasumi from Kendaren mentioned it in his intervention. Red line would be that global commitments translate into overly prescriptive regulation, because this will put too much of a burden on businesses. And at the end of the day, we will lack the necessary flexibility, to adapt to the different circumstances and therefore putting at risk the health and safety at the workplace. And also jobs, purely and simply. So what we need is public policy to be realistic, clear, and foreseeable, and speak to all enterprises, meaning including small enterprises. And the last important point, I think that the global commitments can be successful if social partners are genuinely involved in the shaping, but also in the implementation. Thank you.
That effect, what do you think?
Actually, I'll try to share something that we're trying to do in Brazil, and it's really hard, but we think that would be a game changer if we would be able to put OSH in elementary schools and high schools curriculum. Because by the end of the day, it will be our children that will be our future workers, future CEOs, and future official governments. So I think that would be a great idea and a game changer.
Fully agree. And I think the role of the ILO, actually the one of the UN agency, is to beyond the member state, one country. Our role is to pick up identify the good practices and share that good practices the other countries beyond the member states. That is our role, because we need not to start from the scratch.
I'll take the luxury of restricting myself to the EU, where there's a strong ongoing discussion now about what the policies are long-term, and defense and competitiveness are there. And I think we have a very strong argument when it comes to competitiveness because of the aging of the population in Europe. It affects us here in Japan as well, but in the next 10 years, we're going to lose 10% of the 15 to 64-year-old cohort. That's equivalent of 1 million workers per year over the next 10 years. It'll be the entire equivalent working population of that age in the Netherlands, the 7th largest in the EU. I'm trying to say it's quite dramatic. And yet what we're seeing is more and more young people leaving the workforce for prolonged periods because of mental health issues, older workers leaving the workforce because of musculoskeletal disorders issues, predominantly poor back pain. This is critical. We can't just rely on upskilling and reskilling and immigration to sort out and to make up and keep us with an effective labor force. Thank you.
So much. So a final round of applause to our speakers. And I'd ask you to stay there. So I think we have around 10 to 15 minutes, 10 minutes for questions and any comment, remark, anything that you'd like to tell us. So please go ahead. The floor is yours. Don't be shy.
Hello. It's a bit of a reflection on the comment about agricultural workers that you made earlier and some of the panel discussion where there was a repeated theme of how often people in the informal economy go under the radar. And of course, the two are related. Many people who work in agriculture are in the informal economy. So there are organisations doing something about this. So IOSH is one of those organisations. So we have a sector group that specialises in bringing people together to look at OSH in rural industries. So that's one thing, maybe we can connect people together. And the second is we've done some charitable work in West Africa with shea butter workers. So these are people who grow and harvest and onwards produce shea butter. Many of us, of course, use this product in our moisturizers every day. And they were working in the informal economy. And through convening collaborations with the ILO, right through to governments, the regulator, and IOSH's members on the ground, we put practical risk assessments in place for these informal workers. And it was just what Ulrika said, they didn't know. They did not know that they didn't have to work in these kind of environments. So I think the lesson that I took from this is that we need to educate people about what their rights are and that there is another way of working. And then bringing those collaborative partners together really makes the difference. So we're very grateful to the ILO in the country for sponsoring that work. And we know the government is now really grateful because these people are no longer in the informal economy. They're now recognised and under the protections that we talked about in our first session.
Indeed, Vanessa, thank you so much. So we still have some time for additional questions you may have. Yes?
One of the things, I mean, there are going to be some changes over the next few decades. They're projecting that urban areas are going to double in population by 2050 and triple by 2075. So we've got a movement, particularly into climate and things like that, of a lot of agricultural, small village people moving into urban settings and the nature of work changing to becoming more manufacturing, whatever. One of the problems is governments that don't have regulatory frameworks. And then second to that is with the lack of regulatory inspectors and things like that, particularly in areas of Southern Africa, various other places that really lack government framework for protecting workers. What can the ILO do, or what does the ILO do in negotiating with legislatures and governments and other things to try to develop, as the world becomes more urbanized, a proper framework to protect workers?
Thank you. And before replying to this question, I'll ask Yuka. But let's see if there's any other question before we close. Yes, please. I think we only, there's a microphone here. Not sure if it's working. Let's try. I think this one's working. It's working.
Right. Azman from Malaysia. I represent company of IE Selangor. IE is water in English. Selangor is a state of one of the state of Malaysia. Okay, I interested related to the construction beyond of the basics, right? So in my experience, it depends on the what we call this company. If oil and gas, I have experience in 20 billion project in one of a major project in Malaysia. Is oil and gas. Fatigue is management is very, very crucial. You're talking about the budget and also the what we call this timeline. So 80,000 workers in that time. So in oil and gas company, they have very good in terms of fatigue management, in terms of to measure the body clock. So we work 12 hours, 7 to 7, of course, with a certain numbers of rest or break time. But in terms of other companies, not in oil and gas or not in the very good budget, so certain numbers of workers are pushed to works beyond the working hours. What is your thought in related to this? Whether it depends on the organization. Until the stage in my country, the safety officer, we call safety and health officer, that is registered with the Department of Occupational Safety and Health, required to get a help from the authority, come and inspect. But that is for low budget, what we call this related to safety. But in case of higher budget, every 28 April, we celebrate what we call this ILO OSH World Day. We have a mega toolbox. So that is a budgeted company that they put in the, what we call this early of the project budget. So what is your thought in this to make a balance between the high-end company that is normally oil and gas and compared to non-oil and gas? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me maybe ask Yuka about the first question, maybe with any example you may have from the region in terms of this one, the first one. You may also reply to the second one. I think Linnea maybe has a word to say on this one. If Pierre also wants to react, not necessarily. So Yuka, the first.
Especially for the Malaysia question, actually the ILO working with the DOSH, Department of OSH, and also other organizations to strengthen the capacity of OSH in the small and medium size enterprises. Of course, oil and gas has the very good OSH management system, and they need not the ILO's assistance, but still the more than 80% of the company is they belong to the SMEs or the micro-sized. So we have the specific training programs, capacity building, and also the support the company to establish OSH management system. And actually, the Malaysia ratified 155 last year, and just a few months before, you updated OSH law. And now risk assessment is mandated in all workplaces, including mental health. So the things is ongoing. Let's work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe Linnea wants to have a word to say.
Yeah, of course. I think what you're highlighting is exactly what I'm trying to cover. So thank you for letting me expand on it. What we see is people see it just as a cost in construction. That health and safety is just a cost. But we're getting more and more studies, and I would thank the people who do these studies, which is people in the room, which says, I have one study that says, if you just have an OSH budget in a construction project, doesn't say even how many percent, just that there is an OSH budget, your project delivery will be 2% quicker. That correlation. 2% doesn't sound much, but if it's 2 months, people like to have their road there 2 months earlier. This is what the multilateral development banks want. So I think we really need to start doing this argument on what you gain from it, also the productivity of the workers. And then when it comes to extensive overtime, which was one of the issues you raised, I did an inspection in Nepal last year, and it really comes back to enforcement as well. Because Nepal has a very bad law when it comes to overtime. They have extreme overtimes that's allowed, but still they don't even meet that. And after every inspection, I do a training for the main ministries, the main clients for infrastructure. And the question was simple. I showed the timesheet and I asked, what's the problem? No one sees the problem. I asked, what is the maximum amount of hours you're allowed to work in your country according to your law? So I don't even go into international standards. I don't care. But this is ministry people managing these projects that doesn't know what is the maximum working hours. So we come back a bit to the information. If it's not even about having enough inspections, if the people that's planning the projects don't know what is allowed working hours, you can put anything in the document, but it's never going to be inspected. And then I think also to do this connection between working hours and health and safety. So every time I do an inspection on construction site, I want to see the payroll. And they say, but you're doing a health and safety inspection. Why do you want to look at the payroll? And I said, yeah, because all the policy says one thing, but the only place I can actually see how many hours per day people work is in the payroll, because that's the only document that's usually correct. Everything else can be fixed, but to fix the payroll is too much of an effort. So in the same Nepal inspection, they had one worker that worked 32 days per month. And I said, what is happening? And the Nepalese calendar has 32 days on some months. But there was no one that reacted ever on this. So I think what we need to do is both educate people on what is the maximums and why, because it's not just a want, it's actually a health impact on extensive overtime. So it's not just, I want more money so I can work more. And then I think we really need to raise awareness across the projects on what is important on this. Because this all goes together. And yes, it's easier on oil and gas projects.
Just to reply very quickly, because we have to finish, to the question about labor inspectors and what the ILO does with it. I'll just give you one example. Some years ago, I was working in Budapest, in the ILO office in Budapest. And there was a serious problem of workers dying in agriculture because of accidents with tractors. The root of the problem was not only, of course, the scarcity of resources, was because inspections were not really strategic. And furthermore, inspectors were not qualified to, identify the hazards, assess the risks involved, in working with tractors. So what we did was, first of all, to help the inspectorate through a methodology that the ILO has developed, which is called strategic compliance planning, to better identify what will be the 2 or 3 priorities that they need to address. And then we also provided comprehensive training, well, as comprehensive as we can do with usually the resources we have, and comprehensive on this case is like a 5 days training. But it was enough for the inspectors to be able to correctly understand some of the hazards, some of the risks that were leading to these fatalities. So, and I can tell you that so there was a campaign organized with the Labor Inspectorate that went on for around 2 years, and there was a drop of 40% in the number of fatalities related to work with accidents. And I can tell you that the initial numbers were impressive. So this is just one example of what the ILO does in terms of working with inspectors. I think that Svetlana wants to say something quickly, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to make a comment relating to the working hours and the intensity of work. For instance, in agriculture, many employers, and you will go back to your country, especially labor inspectors, and you will pay attention. In many countries, employers move from the payment for the working day or working hour to the piece rate. And we would like your help, labor inspectors. We would like the help of governments to help us to ban piece rate payment, because piece rate payment kills the workers during heat. Workers, when they go to work, they are said, you have to pick, for instance, 20 boxes per day or 20 kilos of tea, whatever, per day. And this, they put a minimum quota for that working day to be considered is worked, and they get a payment. During the heat, they are workers in agriculture are doing physical work, which is increasing the risk to heat. And when they are under the pressure to meet the quota of the day, and they really have to compromise on their health. So some of you today said that the workers have to be educated, that they know how to stop. Yes, we also educate our members that they have to feel the symptom and stop the work. But this is not enough, because workers in agriculture many still receive less than $2 per day. And if a worker knows that they will not meet the daily quota, they compromise whether they risk to die or they risk not to be paid and die of hunger. Because many agricultural workers, we feed the world, but they are among the food insecure and among the hungry people. So on the piece rate, on the high quota which employers are imposing, it's a very high risk on workers, and we need your help on that, especially those who do the regulations and do the standards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think that we have to wrap up in 1 minute. So let me just tell you what were the objectives of this symposium. Of course, to promote the exchanges that we had, but also to learn from all of you, because the ILO will continue to work on this question of how to mainstream WASH into broader public policies. As a matter of fact, our intention, our objective, our aim is to publish a policy brief next year, exactly on what brought us here today. And I may reach out to all of you, for, further work. And again, to all of you, also to the rest of you, we'll be happy to be sharing more information about this through this policy brief in 2026. So again, thank you to all of you, to our panelists now on the table, and to the previous speakers. And thank you also for your attention, and please have the rest of a very happy day. Thank you.